we can continue with Alessio. Before talk with Alessio, I have to give information about you. Uşaqlar, deməli, uşaqlar, deməli, bir dənə maraqlı bir şey demək istəyirəm. İnşallah tərcümə eləmir məni. Adını demək istəmədiyim bir şey. O, bir dənə sənət əsəri var, ona çox oxşur həddindən artıq. Vüsal, sən bilərsən. Hə? Çox oxşuyur həddindən artıq. Yazda düşdü. Belə, bir vaxtdan fikrim oradadır, ürəyim partladı, ağrıdı. Adı yanıma gəlmir. Bir dənə incə sənət əsəri var, ona dəhşət dərəcədə çox oxşuyur. Alessio da həmçinin mənim özüm də çox istifadə elədiyi bir tool var ki, Hotjar tool'dur. Bu, hə? Van Gogh'un idi, hə? Eşitdiyi adam. Van Gogh'un əsərinə doğrudan çox oxşuyur. Bu Hotjar firmasında işləyir. Hotjar firmasında product designer olaraq işləyir. Digital product designer olaraq işləyir. Və doğrudan da çox mükəmməl bir təcrübəsi olan bir şəxsdir. Bir çox şirkətlər də həmçinin Azərbaycanda da yerli şirkətlər bu heat mapping tool'unu istifadə edir. Həmçinin product research method də çox vacib bir tool'dur. So, hi Alessio, can you hear me? Belki de adını səhv deyirəm.
All right, are we good to go? Okay, hello. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying the conference. Thanks for having me. All right, so I will share my screen because I will talk about visual design. I thought, okay, maybe if I talk about visual design, I should have some visuals. Otherwise, it will be a little bit weird. And so let's see. The question here really that I want to address today is how can we advocate for the value of UI and visual design in today's tech scene specifically? So let's take a look. I am a senior product designer at Hotjar, which is the leading global user insights platform. I'm originally from Italy, but I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. So when I started my career, I started working at the agency Vertigo Design in Rome. Then I moved to Austria, working on consumer fitness apps for mobile at Adidas Fantastic. And among other roles I've had, I was also a part of IBM. I was part of the largest European design studio for IBM in Dublin. And when I moved to Lisbon, I worked at Zalando, which is Europe's biggest fashion online store. So 9 to 5, I'm a product designer. But in addition to this, I am a type designer. So I make fonts. Some of my works include the open source Aleo, which I launched in 2013. It's almost 10 years now. And it's available on Google Fonts. It's used on thousands of websites worldwide, and it's served about 2 million times per week. Then the Lagoon family, which I launched in 2017. And Pani Sans in 2020. In addition to this, I've also collaborated with some clients for custom fonts, and my retail fonts and these custom fonts have been used by some huge brands like Amazon, eBay, USA Today, and the Italian Space Agency. Something I always like to say is that my fonts go to space. So what are we talking about today? The most visual aspects of the product design profession are often underrepresented in today's tech scene. This is due to a few reasons. For the next 2 points, I will simplify and generalize a little bit, but I do think that the fundamental trends are true. So first, the tech companies are often dominated by engineering. Engineering teams are usually the largest in number, and they also have the most mature processes. They have very, tried and true ways of working. Nobody needs to be convinced of why engineering is important. Which is actually something that design needs to do a lot. So for example, most companies nowadays work in sprints. I use Scrum or Kanban, which are typically processes modeled around the needs of engineering teams. These often leads to designers being overwhelmed when it comes to making decisions, sometimes involving compromises. And while it's true that sometimes designers would benefit from a deeper understanding of business and technology, it's also true that often designers are poorly equipped to discuss the value of design itself. And then comes a second aspect, which is related to the various disciplines of design itself. So the three key disciplines I'm talking about are UI or visual design, UX design, user experience, and user research. So roughly a decade ago, and this is a trend I'm seeing, when design thinking and user-centered design weren't as commonly talked about as they are today. Most designers who landed a job in tech had a background in what we would consider traditional design. So this includes disciplines like graphic design, industrial design, and this led to a generation of designers who started very strong when it came to the visual side of things, but had to do a lot of catch up when it came to UX and especially user research. Over the years, product designers have started coming from different backgrounds, which include business, include psychology, as well as many short bootcamp style courses, which focus mostly on design thinking and user-centered design. So this has pushed the market to evolve almost toward the other extreme, where designers, rightly so, value user-centered design methodologies, but, and that's the problem, are weak when it comes to the fundamentals of visual design. So these things combined lead to a severe underappreciation of visual design in the conversations that designers have with other disciplines as well as among other designers, and often, of course, result in lower visual design skills and quality of work. So how do we solve this issue? First of all, we have to understand that the value of visuals goes beyond just looking good. And we have to understand how to communicate this as well. So visual design can improve the user experience, make a product appear more trustworthy, easy to use, appealing, and as a result can improve the bottom line. However, designers often struggle to quantify the benefits of visual design in conversations with their teammates. So let's take a look at a couple of studies actually that try to measure and quantify visual design a little bit. And this could give us some ideas to communicate this value. So the first study is about relative subject duration. This was by Larson and Picard from Microsoft and the MIT. You might be familiar or not with relative subject duration. This is a metric that measures a user's perception of how long they've been performing a task. So the adage says that time flies when you're having fun. And people's perception of time really is manipulated by the enjoyment of their activity. A task that is difficult or unpleasant will tend to be overestimated in duration, while easy tasks are underestimated in duration. So in this experiment, two versions of an e-magazine were created. Half the participants were given a version that was labeled as a good typography version, and half received the poor typography version. And each participant was given a brief tutorial on how to navigate the UI, how to read this magazine, and they were told that they would be reading for 20 minutes. Participants could choose to read anything they wanted from the magazine. However, the participants were interrupted after 16 minutes, not 20, and they were asked to guess how long they had been reading for. Now, the researchers found that the participants in the poor typography condition underestimated the reading time by 24 seconds on average, while the participants in the good typography condition underestimated the reading time by 3 minutes and 18 seconds. So because the participants in both conditions underestimated the amount of time that they had been reading, this indicates that the reading task was pleasant and engaging, but the greater underestimation in the good typography condition indicates that better visual design is responsible for greater engagement during the reading task. So a better looking product really makes UX better in a tangible, measurable way. The other study is actually a study that I ran myself together with my IBM colleague, Rick Subisiek. And I set up this experiment to get data about how different typefaces perform for different types of products. So I took 4 different typefaces: a Transitional Serif, Libre Baskerville, a Humanist Sans, Fira Sans, a Grotesque Sans, which was the famous Helvetica, and a Slab Serif, a Roboto Slab. And I applied these to 4 different types of websites: a bank, a news site, a fitness app, and a clothes shop. The study was a relatively simple survey. The participants were shown 4 versions of each site with the 4 different fonts. And they were asked which of the 4 versions appeared to be the most trustworthy, easy to use, and appealing. And they also had a not sure option. The study was done with a within subject survey. So the questions were randomized for each participant to eliminate the order effect. And we had 73 participants from 17 countries taking part in the study. So now, consistently with other previous studies, the results say that visual design, typography make a measurable difference, and the 4 fonts perform differently. So if we look at the total results, and we sum up the votes for trustworthy, we see that Baskerville had the best rate, with the other 3 fonts performing similarly. And the result for easy to use is quite different, with the sans serif fonts performing better and Baskerville getting the smallest number of preferences. For appealing, again, the sans serif typefaces perform better, although with a smaller difference. So this result isn't particularly significant. Now, these numbers are somewhat fascinating already, but don't give an accurate description of what's happening, because what is more interesting in this experiment, and really is what brings more value compared to previous studies, is that the performances of the typefaces vary significantly between the different types of websites. So let's have a look at the 4 sites individually. For the banking sites, Baskerville appears to be the most trustworthy face. However, it is also the worst performing font for easy to use. Fira gets the most votes for both easy to use and appealing. For the news site, Baskerville is again the most trustworthy, but this time it's also the most appealing. And Helvetica gets the crown for being really the easiest to use in this case. Now, notice how Fira is considered the least trustworthy face for the news site. And get ready for a surprise, because for the fitness app, Fira is the most trustworthy, but also the easiest to use, with Helvetica coming close and the most appealing. Baskerville here is rated as the least trustworthy face in this case. Did you see that coming? And finally, for the clothes shop, Helvetica is considered by far the easiest to use. It's also the most appealing and trustworthy, although this one with a smaller margin. Roboto's Lab here performs bad in every category. And once again, Baskerville is considered the less easy to use of the bunch. So of course, this study also has some limitations, like most studies. It's not based on real interactions with the site, but just on the direct question. And for a news site that wants to appear easy to use, I wouldn't necessarily always recommend Helvetica over Fira Sans, because many factors can come into play, including many aspects of visual design and branding. Really, what this experiment tells us is that typography and visual design can really make a difference in the way that users experience the products that we design, and also that each product is different. So there are no rules that are set in stone, and visual and UX design are closer than we sometimes think. And this should also influence the tests and interviews that we conduct with users. Now, the second important point I want to mention is that we can use visual design to improve accessibility and vice versa. And this is the tricky bit. So inclusive design is not just for people living with disabilities. It makes the experience better for everyone. And we should always remember this. However, too many designers struggle to see how they can contribute, often thinking that it's only engineering's responsibility to guarantee that a product is accessible. A few examples of what designers can have a massive impact on include color and contrast, graphs and chart, and how this information is communicated, text style and layout, target size, motion, testing with users with disabilities. This is something that not enough people do and is actually eye-opening. And there's a lot more that we can do. So as we've seen, visual design can have a big impact on accessibility. And considering how important accessibility is, we should all do all we can to improve it. Now, most products, especially from smaller companies, often have very clear gaps when it comes to how inclusive the product is. But viewing things from a slightly different angle, my tip is not only to improve accessibility with visual design, but also to use accessibility to improve the UI of your product. What I mean is that accessibility is one of those arguments that most people in tech will understand and agree with. Even if they're not subject matter experts, it's very easy to convince someone, hey, our product is not accessible, we need to fix it. So in other words, highlighting accessibility problems in the UI of your product can create the perfect opportunity to convince your stakeholders to revisit and improve the visual design of your product at the same time. Finally, we should all learn to be complete T-shaped designers. So I'll go back to this slide that I was talking about earlier and how we've been seeing a shift in skills that designers have. Now, what I'm doing today is not trying to convince everyone to drop everything and focus only on UI and visual design. But I do believe that it's important for the quality of your work and the conversations around it to have a solid awareness, at least, of all key disciplines that make up product design. And the T-shaped model is a model that can be very useful to assess and evolve your skills. It's natural to have more depth of skills and expertise in one or a few core disciplines, but it's important to have this breadth of knowledge in a variety of foundational disciplines. So as you assess your skills, it's best to go beyond the three core skills that I mentioned, like UI, UX, and research, and include more detailed skills like prototyping or usability testing, as well as soft skills and disciplines that are not strictly design related, but will certainly help you working with your teammates, like front-end development or business understanding. And if you want to excel in today's design market, you have to make sure that all the basics are covered. And you can identify gaps and opportunities, not only in your skill set, but also in what your company needs. So I will leave you with this quick recap of what we talked about. I hope this short talk inspired you to reevaluate the value of visual design, maybe deepen your skills, reconsider some behaviors in your team that might be holding you back, and also equip you with some practical ideas for sparking new conversations with your stakeholders. So feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Thanks, Alessio. It was really good presentation which touched us. Thanks for all information.